up next, we're going to go a little bit off book and talk about the four horsemen of conflict. If you're not familiar, the four horsemen is a metaphor that depicts the end times in the New Testament. The original four horsemen, as you may know, were pestilence, war, famine, and death. And these four horsemen signaled the end of times according to the Christian Bible. However, we're talking about the four horsemen of conflict in this chapter. So the four horsemen of conflict predict, instead of the end of times, the end of a relationship. And basically, if any of these four horsemen rear their heads into a relationship, they might be spelling doom for that particular relationship. The four horsemen that we are going to talk about today are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So the first horseman is criticism. Criticism happens when we attack someone's character. So if two partners are in a conflict with one another and one attacks the core character of the other person, that is considered criticism. Now, this is different from simply offering a critique or voicing a complaint. For example, if someone were simply voicing a complaint, they might say something like, "I was scared when you were running late and you didn't call me." That is not a criticism. That is someone simply voicing their feelings, their concern over a lack of communication from someone, right? They are voicing a complaint about a specific issue in that case. A criticism, on the other hand, would sound something like this. "You never think about how your behavior affects other people. I don't believe that you're forgetful. You're just selfish." So you can see the difference between those two things, right? One is talking about a specific issue, whereas the other is attacking the personality trait of the individual. Now, criticism alone doesn't spell doom just yet. But the problem with criticism is that it becomes really pervasive within the relationship. And it can make the victim of that criticism feel like they are being assaulted, rejected, or hurt. And it can cause the perpetuator and the victim to fall into this escalating pattern, which ultimately paves the way for some of these other horsemen. So the next horseman is contempt. When we communicate in this contemptuous state, we are truly mean to the other individual. So when we are speaking with contempt, we are treating the other individual with disrespect. We might do things like mock them with criticism, we might ridicule them, call them names, mimic them, or use body language such as eye rolling or scoffing. And all of these behaviors make the target feel like they are despised and worthless. In addition, a person who speaks with contempt assumes this sort of position of moral superiority over the other person. So if one partner comes to the other and says, "Oh man, I've had such a long day, you wouldn't believe how tired I am." And the other person responds with, "You're tired? Cry me a river. I've been home with the kids all day. Could you be any more pathetic?" You can feel the disrespect that is happening with that response. And yes, the second partner might be just as tired from being home with the kids all day, but partners have to listen to one another in order to make a relationship work. And this contempt often comes from really long, simmering, negative thoughts about the partner. And research has shown us that contempt is the single greatest predictor of divorce and the termination of relationships. The next horseman is defensiveness. Typically, defensiveness is a response to criticism. And in this case, the individual is playing the victim and they are making excuses and basically sending the message that we don't take their concerns seriously. And in addition, when we are being defensive, we are failing to take responsibility for the mistakes that we've made. And we might even attempt to reverse the blame and make it our partner's fault. For example, partner A might come up to partner B and say, "Hey, did you call Betty and Ralph and tell them we're not coming tonight as you promised you would this morning?" And partner B might respond, "I was just too damn busy. As a matter of fact, you know how busy I was. Why didn't you just do it?" So rather than taking responsibility for the fact that partner B didn't do what they said that they were going to do, they don't admit any kind of fault, they don't take any kind of responsibility, and they try to make it the other person's fault instead. And so in order to avoid this kind of defensiveness, we can accept responsibility for our actions, or in this case, our inactions. We can admit fault for our mistakes, and we can attempt to understand the other person's perspective. If we fail to do this and we continue to act defensively, this only acts to escalate the conflict further. And the final horseman that we have here is stonewalling. Stonewalling is usually a response to contempt. And in stonewalling, the listener withdraws from the interaction, shuts down, and simply stops responding to their partner. And this makes sense. If we were treated with disrespect, we might withdraw and shut down and stop responding, right? And so we make these evasive maneuvers if we are stonewalling in order to avoid confronting the issues and the individual. So we might do things like leave the room or turn away from our partner, or act busy when we are in their presence, or engage in other sort of distracting behaviors. And so if you are in a relationship with someone and you see some of these four horsemen coming into that relationship, you hear criticisms, there's contempt happening, defensiveness, stonewalling, you might want to take a step back and figure out what's going on in the relationship, because these four acts tend to predict the end of the relationship.